So, the coronavirus. Is it the end of the world? Is it just an overblown flu? Or does the truth lie somewhere in between? Today we're going to be exploring that subject together, and I'm going to let you decide for yourself. Hello, my name is Robin, and this is Politics and Religion at the Dinner Table. First of all, I would like to clarify that no liberals that I personally have met think that the coronavirus is the end of the world. I would also like to add that no liberals that I personally have met think that catching the coronavirus is a death sentence. But I do know that there is a lot of panic. If there wasn't a lot of panic, then no one would have taken a substance meant to be used in fish tanks in hopes that it would have a prophylactic effect. But on the other hand, I've seen a lot of conservatives saying that the coronavirus is no worse than a really bad flu because the rate of people who catch it and then die looks to be about the same. And they think that the media is probably just overhyping this whole thing. Which, to be fair, it's perfectly fair to have that concern. After all, the media in our country is very profit-driven. And that means that sometimes they do try to make things seem a little more exciting than they really are. So the real question is the coronavirus really a big deal? Well, there are a couple key differences between the coronavirus and the flu. One major difference is that we have vaccines and antiviral medications to prevent and treat the flu, respectively. And that makes a massive difference. Well, the vaccine alone makes a massive difference in the number of people who catch it. And the medication gives you a bit of a fighting chance. Another factor that you have to keep in mind is that the coronavirus is spread a lot more easily than the flu. It stays on surfaces for longer, it lingers in the air. You are more likely to catch it from someone you never even directly interacted with than you are with the flu. Which means that a lot more people are catching it. So even if the percentage of people who die from it was exactly the same as a really bad flu, you're still going to have a lot more deaths. And honestly, that's exactly what we've seen. There have been 98,588 deaths in the US alone at the time of my recording this. I looked on the CDC's website, and in the year of 2017 to 2018, there were 61,000 deaths from the flu in that year. Now, the reason why I picked that year is because it was the worst year for the flu in a 10-year span. Now, when I point that out, a lot of people say that there's a million different ways you could die every day. So some people wonder, am I really gonna lock myself up on the chance that I could die? And there is one significant difference from coronavirus and a lot of the other deaths you could run into. And that's deaths from the coronavirus are exponential, which basically means that if I go out and have a car crash, you're not going to die because you interacted with someone who was exposed to the car crash. But if I go out and get the coronavirus, but also interact with 5 other people, a couple of them could die. And so there is a certain level of social responsibility, not to yourself, but to other people who might not have a choice in taking the risk because they're essential employees and their employer won't let them stay home. But of course, it's not as if though we can stay locked up forever. And I understand that completely. And no one's saying that we should. There's a graphic that has been shown by the media many, many times. And in it they show the flatten the curve graphic. It shows one spike for if we don't shelter in place, and another lower spike that's maybe a bit longer, but it's low enough. Keeping that spike below a certain point will keep hospitals from being overburdened, which can not only save the life of coronavirus patients, but also the lives of people who go to the hospital for any host of reasons, because the hospital won't be stretched thin with all the coronavirus patients hitting them at once. But of course you might be like, yeah, well that's very important and valuable for people in other areas, but my area doesn't have an issue. I saw my hospital, they're not overburdened. And if that's the case, I genuinely want to say congratulations. That means people in your area have done a great job. But, of course, I understand that you might not accept that, because doing a great job at quarantining your area looks exactly the same as if you lock yourself up for no reason at all. You don't see that many deaths. So the real question is, how do you know if hospitals aren't overburdened because there aren't people getting sick because of quarantine, or if they're just not overburdened because they were never going to be? It's not like you can live through a timeline twice, trying 2 different techniques and see which goes best. You need a control group. Well, we're in luck, because I was actually talking about this very subject with a conservative, and he said that we do have a control group, and in fact, it's that control group that convinced him that we don't need a quarantine at all, because after all, Sweden's done absolutely nothing about the coronavirus, and their numbers have leveled off. Of course, as I mentioned before with the flatten the curve graphic, their numbers were always going to level off. The question is, how big the spike and how many deaths before the leveling off? And so that's what I went online to look into. So apparently, Sweden had 3,992 deaths at the time of filming this video. Of course, I need another country to compare it to, and Denmark's in the same region of the world, has the same approximate climate, and is culturally incredibly similar to Sweden. The main difference between Denmark and Sweden is Denmark shut down, Sweden did not. And so I looked at their numbers. They had 561. But of course that number is not fair, because Denmark only has a little over half the population of Sweden. So I found another country with also similar, cultural, climate, etc., and Norway. So then I added Denmark and Norway's numbers together to get a similar population to Sweden, and both countries together had 796 deaths. That is significantly less than Sweden's 3,992 deaths. And that's not all. Sweden has a significant advantage over the US. They have sick laws that ensure that if you're sick, you get to stay home. For the first 2 weeks, your employer pays for it. Past that point, the government pays for it. But the point is, people who are showing signs of illness can just stay home. That's not the case in the US. Now, we have put provisions in place in light of the coronavirus. For example, we are permitted 2 weeks sick time if we are actively investigating whether we are infected with the coronavirus. But not for anything else. One weakness with that is if you're denied for a coronavirus test, or if you're just not really sick enough to want to waste a coronavirus test on, if you just don't feel sick enough to really feel like you need to take a coronavirus test, then either of those cases, you're no longer investigating whether you have the coronavirus. And in the US, we have no guaranteed sick leave, and a lot of businesses have terrible sick leave policies where you can only be sick for a very, very limited number of days in a year. So people are in the habit of, if they can work through it, they'll work through it because they want to conserve those sick days for when they feel like they really need it. And the thing is, with all those people who aren't sick enough to really get a coronavirus test, they might come to work and keep spreading it, even when people in other countries like Sweden would have probably just stayed home. And that means that the US, by opening up, is in a much more precarious situation than Sweden. Now, I did hear one person argue, like, yes, we will have more deaths by opening back up, but we can't keep the economy shut down for an insignificant number of deaths. So naturally, I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I asked him, well, what is an insignificant number of deaths? And he actually gave a really good, reasonable answer. Basically, if more people die from poverty, from being out of a job, than die from the coronavirus, that's an insignificant number of coronavirus deaths. And honestly, that's fair, assuming more people are dying from poverty than would die from coronavirus deaths. So the real question is, are people dying from poverty right now? Again, we're in a very unique and unusual situation with that. More people can qualify for unemployment than normally would be able to, so a lot more people are getting that money in. On top of that, in addition to the normal unemployment payment, the federal government is paying an additional $600 a week for everyone who's unemployed, which means a lot of people are actually getting more to be unemployed than they were to be employed. One thing to also keep in mind is that right now, a lot of bills are being put on hold. A lot of utility companies are not charging late fees. They're not shutting down water, electricity, or doing any penalty for being late. There's a lot of that with rents. There's areas where you're not even allowed to charge or late fees for rent right now. But once we open up, all that's going to change. Of course, this isn't everybody. People fall through the cracks. There's many people who still don't qualify for unemployment for whatever reason, whether it's because they were in the middle of switching jobs, the new job shut down, but they were never officially hired, or whatever reason there is. A lot of people are unemployed right now without the unemployment. On top of that, our system was not made to handle the sheer volume of unemployed people that we are currently getting. So phone lines are busy, websites are crashing, even people who should qualify for unemployment are not currently getting the unemployment check they should be getting. Even if they manage to put in the application, many people aren't seeing any response. There's delays in the payments. A lot of people are like, well, I've been told I qualify for this unemployment, but I haven't seen it yet. But the question is the solution to open back up? Now, one fear I've had about opening up, which I've seen might have been unfounded since a lot of the US has opened up already, is that I was concerned that people would be too afraid to go out and all these businesses would open up, go to a lot of expense to open up and bring their employees back in, and then have to shutter their doors again because no one's coming in, only at much more expense than just staying closed would have been. However, that is not the case so far. From what I've heard, a lot of people are rushing into, I gotta get my nails done, gotta get my hair done, I haven't been out for so long, gotta get out, gotta get out, gotta get out. But of course, if that brings out another wave of the coronavirus, then people might panic, stay at home, and of course then employers will be in a situation where they're either paying people to come in and do nothing and the business is losing more money than they did when they were shut down, or people do start to worry a little more and stop going to stores and stuff and people start getting sent home. They still have a job, so they're not getting that unemployment check. And landlords and the economy's open up. Landlords and utility bills,
they're going to be asking for payments. Only this time, their income's going to be a lot smaller. So it could be a lot worse in the long run. But who knows? Maybe people keep going out, but that's not really a good thing either. Because if people keep going out and the virus keeps spreading, then these people could get sick and end up in a hospital, which could end up costing them far more than a period of time without work ever could, and they could end up with a bill that they can never pay back in their entire lives. And that's assuming it doesn't end their lives. I don't really know the right solution, but I just don't think in an economy where going to the doctor is literally the most expensive thing you can have to do, and also the virus can actually kill you too, I don't think the solution to poverty caused by the virus is to make people go out into the public sphere too early. But it really doesn't matter what I think. One way or the other, we are opening up. Most of the United States already has. Maybe it'll be okay. Maybe life will go back to normal. Maybe I'm worrying over nothing. Maybe everybody rushing to go out and see people again will bring about another wave of coronavirus. Who knows? I guess we'll find out really soon. But in the meantime, if you could just be safe. It never hurts to put on a mask. It doesn't hurt to just not go to a big crowded club for like a year or two, just to be sure. And maybe it won't help doing those things, who knows, but why take the chance? Well, it's been great. It's my first time doing this, so I'm sorry if this was all terrible and awkward, but see you next time. Bye-bye.